Hey everyone! I'm Albert Boris. Super Mario 64, baby. This is a game I've seen a lot more contention on over the years. Some people think it's one of the greatest classics of all time, while others think it has more than shown its age. Personally, if I had to put myself in one of those camps, I would probably lean towards the former though, actually. Even as someone who has absolutely no shame disliking old games if I think they deserve it, the truth is a lot of retro games just don't hold up that well in the modern day, whether due to limitations or having a different audience in mind. However, Super Mario 64 has always been one of the strong exceptions in my opinion. Maybe because there's a bit of nostalgia involved, it was one of the first Mario games I ever learned about through YouTube, but while it certainly has its rough edges, mostly in the archaic camera, I'm honestly surprised by how well it's aged comparatively to other N64 titles, especially for being the first 3D platformer ever made. There's a really sufficient amount of content, with tons of organically created levels for you to explore, with most of the stars even being collectible in any order, and the controls, for as rugged and sensitive as they may be at times, are incredibly versatile, with dozens of fun and unique movesets to play around with once you get used to them. If only the remake didn't f them up so badly. Never mind the whole personality of the game just oozes so much charm as well, with the whole castle hub world you got to explore, and the idea of having to jump through paintings to enter levels. Like, come on, that felt so cool as a kid. I love Super Mario 64 for all of its faults and strengths, and I promise it's not the Nathaniel Bandy brainwash kicking in. I mean, he was the first YouTuber I ever watched, but by the time I got into the Mario franchise, I didn't even know about him. And so with all of the memories I have of this game, I thought, why not rank all of its courses from worst to best? I still don't know why they're called courses, but whatever. As the world's first 3D platformer game, it certainly has a pretty wide quality variety, ranging between its levels, with some of them having genuinely great and interesting ideas, while others look and feel more like abstract tech demos. Which is understandable. Apparently the game was planned to have up to 40 levels at one point. However, while it's understandable why it was cut down, in execution, it does certainly contribute to a somewhat lopsided experience. And probably the worst part is that a lot of those mediocre stages tend to find themselves more often in the late game on the upper floors. That's probably my biggest complaint for the game personally, since the most fun and creative ideas were usually restricted to the early game, probably to draw enough people in. However, it's a small price to pay, especially for a game at this time. So with all of that being said, let's get started and see which stages have aged the worst. Okay, so if anyone actually disagrees with this one, unironically, please let me sincerely know what planet you're living on, because I haven't been to a single one, including my home planet, where Rainbow Ride is anything but the single worst level. It is so miserably boring and frustrating at the same time. The thing about Rainbow Ride is that it's kind of supposed to be a final test of skills, being the last of the 15 regular courses in the game, and located on the highest floor. And it is a test of skills, but less for your platforming abilities and more for your patience. Because for over half of the missions, you're just sitting on this slow-moving carpet as it takes you to your destination. Sometimes you have a few obstacles in the way you need to jump over, but otherwise it just feels so monotonous, and the fact that making any mistake means you're gonna have to go through this journey all over again is so freaking annoying! You can't even stay on any individual platform for too long, because even the stupid carpet has no patience and will just dissipate into the air if you don't get back on it soon enough. Personally, I'm all in for challenge, but when it's combined with such mind-numbing boredom that requires little to no input, it just becomes a huge drag. And do you want to know what's even more sad? The fact that the missions that don't primarily make use of the stupid rug are actually kinda fun. Whether it's this red coin maze or this obstacle course leading into the tricky triangles, there is some genuinely fun platforming to be had. And on the positive side, while you fortunately don't have to take the carpet to the start to reach the main center of the stage, as you can also just jump down here instead and then climb up a pole, I'm not sure that was exactly intentional. And it still doesn't take away from the absolute slog the rest of the level is. And that's not to mention just how boring the theme is. The only thing that's rainbow about this course is the path that the carpet follows, otherwise it's just a bland grey textureless blocks. Rainbow Ride? More like Straight Ride. But yeah, there is almost nothing celebratory at all about this final level. Even the music is just an overused and upbeat slider theme, which does not fit the celestial setting at all. So I can't really give it anything higher than D tier. Even if it does have fun moments, it is overshadowed by the bad to such an extent that it's just not worth it. Get out of here. Next, the second worst level in the game is none other than Tiny Huge Island. Yeah, I imagine this one might be somewhat of a hot take, since from what I've seen, this one's a bit of a fan favorite, but to me, it perfectly sums up a cool concept with an almost horrible execution. The idea is simple. You've got this hilly island in the sky where if you jump into warp pipes, you'll change the size of it to be either really big or really small. In fact, you can even manipulate which one you start at, depending on if you jump into the big or tiny painting. Unfortunately, both of them are kind of annoying. The tiny island is the one I personally tend to select, as the smaller size obviously means it takes less time to get around, but it also comes with the drawback of very little space being available, making it easy to slip up and fall. The huge island feels a bit more normal in its size, but not only is it a bit too spacey and big to traverse, but it also becomes easy to see here why I never really cared for this level, because it's just not very interesting. It's just got a basic green hill aesthetic, something we've already seen previously in the game, and in order to move around, you have some pretty frustrating segments you need to get through as well, whether it's the stupid wind trying to push you off the bridges, or this giant ass lake that takes 10,000 years to get through. Literally, the only thing that's actually unique about the course is the trademark Tiny Huge gimmick. Otherwise, it's quite possibly the most basic stage in the game. I feel like the most memorable part of the stage itself is the Wiggler fight, where you first flood his home and then beat him up for a star. And that's only because it's so uncannily jerkish of Mario, not because the fight itself is any interesting. Although, hey, at least there is a bit of a thematic variety with the cave within the island, and I do especially fancy the red coin star you can find here. Although other than that, I really don't like Tiny Huge Island. I don't hate it like I do with Rainbow Ride, I do respect the idea at least, and it is a bit of fun to try and walk around on a tiny island, but I can't be bothered to give it more of a D. It's a level that definitely got better in Super Mario 64 DS, due to Luigi's high jump and twirl jump making navigation a bit easier, but otherwise, yeah, screw off. Well, at least those are the only two levels of this wonderful game that I don't enjoy at all. Starting from number 16, or rather 16.5, from this point on, I think all stages are decent enough experiences. And I say 16.5 because this is where I'm gonna place every single Castle Secret Star, aside from the 3 Bowser levels. And honestly, this decision was easy. None of them are game-breakingly frustrating like the 2 levels below, but they're also nowhere near as interesting or filled with content like the rest of the game stages. They're just cool secrets you can find for variety. But I'll still rank them individually too, because I have my thoughts on them as well. At number 6, the worst one is the Tower of the Wing Cap. That f***ing wing cap that I hate. Maybe that's a harsh statement, it's completely fine in casual circumstances, but geez, it's awkward to control, Mario randomly gains bursts of speed that ruin your momentum, and the already janky camera of this game gets even more uncooperative. However, I probably wouldn't associate so much negativity with this power-up though, if it weren't for the way this mission handled it. The way it plays out is that you already start off high in the air, and then have to slowly make your way down while nabbing the 8 red coins on the way. But if you miss one at any point, you might as well start over again, because even though you can later jump off the tower to resume your flight, you can never fly high enough again to where some of these coins are located. Nowadays, because I'm so used to the game, I can usually get them all on one consecutive turn, but back in the day, it was a slog to keep on restarting. And it's not even like it's a particularly interesting stage either, it's just one flight and then you're done. You know what, maybe I was too generous, this specific stage is indeed tier. Number 5 is Wing Mario Over the Rainbows. This one's a better use of the wing cap, although it's still not exactly a jam. The main culprit, of course, is the fact that if you fall off at any point, you're sent all the way back to outside Peach's castle, and you have to make your way to the top floor all over again. But even though that's horribly sadistic, I'm not gonna dock too many points for that, because the level itself is actually not that hard. Making your way from cloud to cloud to collect the red coins is pretty smooth sailing, as there's wing cap boxes in almost all of them, plus 2 cannons you can use to get to higher ground, and while it certainly takes time, there are very few times where I've actually fallen off. Heck, the first time I played this in 64 DS, I beat it in one session. That said, because it takes a while to complete this level, it's still kind of boring. Number 4 is the Secret Aquarium. This one is just inoffensive and kind of relaxing, I suppose. I have a lot of memories with this one, as it was always one of the first stars I would knock out on my playthroughs, but while it's got one of the most soothing music themes in the game, and the swimming controls aren't bad per se, there's not exactly much substance to this level. You just swim after the 8 red coins in this open box, and that's it. No hazards or anything. Number 3 is the Cavern of the Metal Cap. The coolest part about this one is the fact that the only way to access it is by finding a hidden portal in Hazy Maze Cave. Otherwise, it's just a fairly short corridor where you once again get 8 red coins. But the fact that you have to use the metal cap to get the underwater coins without getting sucked by the stream is pretty cool. Plus there's some challenging platforming to be had to make sure you don't fall in. Number 2 is the Secret Under the Moat. Despite not making any use of its signature Vanish Cap power-up at all for some reason, it's a fun obstacle course where you need to be genuinely careful, and I suppose that's what matters the most. And the best secret level is without a shadow of a doubt the Princess's Secret Slide. Not only is it a fun enough introduction to how the slider stages will work, even letting you fall off to skip a huge chunk of it if you're daring, but it's also noticeable for being the only secret stage with 2 stars to collect. One you just get normally by reaching the bottom, but for the other one, you have to get down in under 21 seconds, which is actually a bit more challenging than it seems. It's still a very short and lacking level compared to the main stages, but for being a secret stage, it's pretty solid. But yeah, all in all, aside from the Wing Cap Tower, all of these are at the bottom of the C tier. Now, let's get back to discussing the regular courses. Tall Mountain is the weakest of the game's acceptable main stages, and while it's a completely functioning Super Mario 64 level, it's still fairly boring and repetitive. It's another island mountain stage in a game that already has a dozen of them, but while the rest of them have additional gimmicks to make them more than that, this one is just a tall mountain you climb up. And it's really easy to make a mistake and fall off. That wouldn't be too much of a problem. After all, the challenge makes the reward more rewarding, but what is a problem is that that's almost all the stage has going for it. 4 of its 6 missions are just different variations of trying to climb up to the top, and it kind of gets monotonous. Especially if you're bad and keep missing jumps, forcing you to redo the procedure over and over again. At least one of them rewards you with a portal to a tough but fair secret slide segment, which is pretty fun, but then for another one, you're left trying to catch this stupid monkey on the summit that keeps running away so it can show you a star. Why is it so hard to catch him? Not even the bunny was this bad, and that was over a bigger area. And heck, there's an even more wicked monkey earlier in the level that steals your hat if you get up close, which is nearly impossible to get back once he does. And at this point, the level might as well just be called the Monkey Island. There, I found your destination, Guybrush. But yeah, while this is definitely not a bad level by design, it's absolutely a fine ordeal to trek up the mountain, the repetitiveness is more than noticeable. So honestly, even as sadistic as Blast to the Lonely Mushroom is, the fact that it's different in style from the other missions here makes it probably my favorite star to collect here. Overall, I just don't really have any strong attachment to this level. The theme is generic, and the music, while fitting and iconic, is just Bob-omb Battlefield for the 100th time, but on the whole I wouldn't mind playing it, even if it's the most average Super Mario 64 level of all time, so C tier. So, if my words about the secret aquarium were anything to go by, you might be under the assumption that I'm not as harsh on the underwater levels of this game as most people seem to be. And well, that would be correct, I suppose. While they're certainly controversial in this game for rightful reasons, I'd say, since swimming is much slower than just walking and jumping around, I wouldn't say it's actively unfun, since the controls are still really responsive, and coupled with the incredibly relaxing Dire Dire Duck soundtrack, they make for some surprisingly soothing and pleasant stages in spite of it all, even with the slower pace. However, that won't stop me from only putting Dire Dire Ducks at number 15. Despite the praises I just brought up, regular platforming is still at least 10 times more fun than swimming. And well, this level immediately starts by having you land in the water. And in order to get to the main centerpiece of the level, you're gonna have to swim through over half a minute of tunnels just to get to it. It's not as frustrating as, say, climbing up and then falling off from Tall Mountain, but there are definitely other things I'd rather do than this still. And to top it off, most of the missions here are of varying degrees of flawed. The chests in the current star is absolutely unbearable since you have to open them in the right order while you're being tugged by a whirlpool. The Manta Ray and Jetstream ones are a little annoying as it's easy to miss a ring and having to start over, and while the red coins by the moving poles is admittedly a bit relaxing, it does grind my patience a bit still, and missing a jump is just the worst feeling ever. Although, I do really like the star where you need to use both the Vanish and Metal Caps to get through this cage, even if you technically only need the Vanish Cap. And on the whole, I definitely think the theme is one of the most interesting ones out of any level in the game, taking place in Bowser's abandoned submarine dock. And the fact that the second Bowser stage is located in the same room as you access this level, and the only way to unlock that is by boarding Bowser's sub in this level, is pretty damn cool, and gives Dire Dire Docks a sense of exclusivity that the other stages don't have. And I also think it's cool how its portal is literally just water. However, I wish Bowser's sub didn't disappear after you beat him, as it makes the stage emptier when you come back to it, but at the same time, I guess it adds a bit of world building, and an implication that they fled after defeat, so I'm not gonna complain too much. But yeah, Dire Dire Docks is a level which, while I can't stand it, it definitely appeals compared to some of the more engaging stages of the game, so I can't be more generous than to give it C. Of the two snowy levels in Super Mario 64, I think many will probably come to agree that Snowman's Land is the weaker one. Not because it's actively unfun, but because all of its ideas are just kind of haphazardly stitched together. The developers pretty much just went, what can we put here that's snow themed? So they poured all of it out, but the only set piece that feels like it got marginal focus was this large snowman you can climb up. Beyond that, you have this random ice block maze in one corner, an ice version of the bully chilling in another, and also this random igloo that's actually bigger than it looks. Oh yeah, and also this star beyond an icy lake. Individually, none of these missions are exactly obnoxious, but the fact that they're so simple and easy to get and don't feel organically implemented into this white plane at all makes it all feel like an afterthought. What if the chill bullies instead, for example, could perhaps get their own dedicated section of the map, perhaps inside the igloo, where they could collectively get a bigger focus? And I'm not just suggesting this because I love the bullies and think they look sick, but as it is when there's only one of them, it sticks out like a sore thumb, literally. It sorta just exists. The only idea here that feels fully developed really is the titular snowman itself, which actually is fairly tough to get up on top of, especially with how it tries to blow you off halfway through. And I guess the igloo is kinda nifty too, with how you need to find the vanish cap to go through the ice, but I digress. As it is, Snowman's Land is just kinda bland and wasted in ideas, and while it's a fine enough level, I don't exactly lose sleep by not playing it. Why couldn't the chill bully get more of a focus though? Seriously, God bless 64DS for giving us Chef Chili to compensate. That boss fight was genuinely kingly. But yeah, can you believe it? 4 of the 6 upper floor levels are all C tier or worse. I don't know if they were just running out of ideas in general when it came to their last few courses, or the difficulty being cranked up a little too high was the main culprit, but in either case, they definitely paled in creativity and enjoyment compared to the early game stages. Which is a bit sad to see, but whatever. At least we're finally at the B tier now. Shifting Sandland, or as Nathaniel Bandy might put it,
Dry Desert 2?
is the first level on the list that I can confidently say I find pretty good, although that compliment does not come for free. Because this is by far the course I have the biggest love and hate relationship with. It's hard to find a level that's given me so much simultaneous joy and frustration at the same time, and there's only one element to blame it all on: that goddamn quicksand. It either slows you down, tries to suck you in, or in the worst case, it just instantly kills you if you touch it. And they put this insta-kill quicksand in some of the most obnoxious places as well, like surrounding this Toxbox Abe and the pyramid. But while it does make navigation a bit annoying, it's only ever that frustrating if you're going for 100 coins, and sometimes the red ones. Otherwise, it's not that hard to maneuver around, and still gives the stage a nice engaging challenge curve. Plus the wing cap, while I don't like it per se, saves much frustration as well, since you can easily get to different areas with it. And theming wise, I've always immensely enjoyed the vibes of this stage. The pyramid is an incredibly nice set piece, offering a fun platforming dungeon inside and unique boss, and the music and beige color scheme of the desert both do an excellent job of making the stage feel treacherous and hot. A lot of people don't really like desert themes for being bland, which I blame the new soup games on for making them generic, but when done right like in this level, they can sometimes be my favorite level archetype, just for how hostile and mysterious they can be. And while Shifting Sandland is unfortunately a bit of a hassle, I typically enjoy my time here fine enough, so it gets to kick off B tier. Oh yeah, and also Klepto is fine. Does it suck a little when he steals your cap? Yeah, no doubt, but at least he's not as annoying as the monkeys to get it back from, so I don't mind him. Jolly Roger Bay is definitely the better of the two water-based stages of the game. It still shares most of the positive attributes of Dire Dire Docks, that being the soothing atmosphere and music, but it also lacks most of the drawbacks that made that level a bit frustrating. Instead of immediately starting in the water, here you still begin on dry land, and typically have a bit more areas where you can walk around, like this pirate ship or this cavern. And while the submarine dock was a pretty unique concept for a stage, Jolly Roger Bay setting is simply just more charming, taking place in this foggy lake with spikes jutting out. It just feels a lot more exciting and adventurous, in part thanks to this subtle pirate theming. And the individual stars are just a lot more engaging to collect as well. I'd much rather look for red coins in a deep water or on a shipwreck, rather than while jumping between slow-moving poles, and trying to nab a star from a wiggly eel is a lot more comedic and memorable than trying to get through manta ray rings. And plus, you can even enter the submerged shipwreck itself during one of the missions, which is super cool as well. And while it does have the gimmick where you need to open chests in a certain order, at least there's no f***ing current trying to suck me in, so it's fine. Overall, this is just a really pleasant stage, and while there are certainly more engaging levels that don't involve slow swimming, for what it is, it's definitely one of the most beautiful and yet adventurous little stages there is, so I'll give it a high B tier score. Next at number 11, Hazy Maze Cave is another one of those stages which I kinda both love and hate simultaneously. On one hand, do not let the name fool you. This level is actually kind of easy to navigate for the most part. The only true maze in this course is a very specific section you have to get through for 2 stars. And while that part is certainly confusing since every corner looks the same, it's also fairly small fortunately, and it is cool that you need to equip the metal cap in order to not suffocate from toxic gases here. But yeah, besides that, Hazy Maze Cave is actually kinda small. You pretty much just have 2 corridors at the start, one of them leading to a giant pit and an underwater cavern, and the other to this big open mineshaft area, from where you can also access the aforementioned maze. The atmosphere is definitely what carries the level first and foremost. The dark, eerie green color palette and the damp, quiet remix of the classic underground theme lend themselves almost perfectly to that surrealistic N64 vibe. And with the almost claustrophobic layout and all the bottomless pits, it really does make you feel like you're exploring an abandoned mine where no one can help you if anything goes wrong. And as mentioned previously, it's also the only level in the game to contain an entrance to another stage as well, which is a nice reward as well for exploring the stage. That said though, a lot of the stars here are also just not that fun to get through. I already mentioned the confusing toxic maze, but honestly, it's not even just that. The amount of pitfalls almost everywhere, or needlessly slow gimmicks like this platform you have to ride, or Dory who can be awkward to control, do eventually get a little grating after a while. Not so much it makes for a bad experience, you don't use them too much so it's fortunately over before it gets quite bad, but it definitely still makes for a level where it can't really be as snap or swift in, when there's a lot of sluggish moments. It's not as frustrating as shifting Sandaland since it's not as easy to screw up, even if it still sucks when you do, but yeah, so while I do generally quite enjoy my time here, it's yet another level I don't try to return to too much, even if it's pretty iconic. To be honest, Whomp's Fortress, for as iconic and classic as it is a level I've always felt a little confused on how I should truly feel about it. See, I actually first played the Super Mario Galaxy 2 version of this stage when it was Throwback Galaxy, and while I kinda loved it there, it was a nice little fortress level with lots of platforming opportunities and a more open-ended and exploration-focused experience compared to most other Galaxy 2 levels. And as someone who already knew about this level from Mario 64 playthroughs online, I thought it was a super charming reference on that front as well. But then I played it in the actual Super Mario 64, and while it technically has more stuff to do, I also didn't like it as much. Maybe it's just that Galaxy 2's atmosphere for it was a little more bombastic, never mind it had a Cloudflower power-up, but here it definitely feels more like just a normal good level. It has nice and tight platforming. It's a little challenging, but it's also not frustrating since it's easy to get back up if you fall. It also has a linear structure, while still giving you many different ways to reach the top, in addition to housing corners you can explore on the side. There's nothing outright wrong with it. I just also don't think it's the most interesting location ever. I've always just been personally more drawn to levels that either have a more well-defined theme or gimmick, or are almost completely open-ended for you to decide yourself where to go. And from that lens, Whomp's Fortress is pretty basic by comparison, in both design and setting. Like, it doesn't really feel so much like a true fortress, as much as it's more like a toy tower in the middle of nowhere. Ironically enough, it felt more at place in Galaxy 2, which was already more abstract and linear in its nature. Although I still think Whomp's Fortress is really iconic here too. And for what it's worth, it's definitely the game's most functionally good stage. I just don't think it's anything super crazy. Alright, now we're getting somewhere. For number 9, it is time for us to talk about the first of the Bowser levels on the list. These kinds of stages I've always had a bit of a soft spot for in this game, ever since I first saw playthroughs of it on YouTube. They're a nice break from the more open-ended collectathon stages, taking the skills you've learned and combining them for a nice challenging road to Bowser. And their music is always so beautifully foreboding and climactic to get you in the mood for a showdown. Of the 3 Bowser levels, I do think that the weakest one is Bowser in the Fire Sea, the second one, although I say that loosely. It just doesn't really stand out as much when the other 2 had unique skyboxes and themes, and this one just takes place in a basic lava setting. Layout wise though, it doesn't disappoint. It probably has the least interesting level design of the Bowser levels, since it has a lot more slow paced segments where you need to wait, but on another note, it also has the least frustrating red coin star, since you don't have to do any fancy awkward movement to get them, and they're all located on the way and pretty easily found for the most part as well. Bowser himself is fine, I guess. It's cool that he can teleport occasionally, and I like that the arena can tilt whenever Bowser jumps, forcing you to be extra careful so you don't slide off, but otherwise it's just another simple Bowser fight. Also, what even is that warp, pipe supposed to be? Seriously, why does it look like a corkscrew? Yet another unsolved N64 mystery. But yeah, I don't really have any issues with Bowser in the Fire Sea. It's pretty nice, although it's easy to see why it's the lesser of the 3. Now Bowser in the Dark World on the other hand, now we're really talking. This is a much better example I'd bring up to show my love for the Bowser levels. Even though this is technically the first one you venture through in the game, in retrospect I feel like it should have swapped places with Fire Sea. The difficulty is a lot more apparent throughout the whole course, with a lot more moving platforms to follow, much more hard and cryptic to reach red coins, as well as just more narrow pathways as well, especially since there's no lava to catch you if you fall off at any point. And man, that skybox is just something else. The ominous dark green stalagmites towering above you do an outstanding job at making you feel small in this giant, almost dreamlike cavern, to the point that it even freaked me out and gave me existential dread as a kid. And it perfectly sets the tone for a dungeon of Bowser's. Honestly, the more I think about it, the less I understand why this wasn't the basement Bowser stage instead of Fire Sea. Like, wouldn't it make more sense for the basic lava level to be your first impression, and for the dark green underground cave to be in the dark green underground basement? I mean, I guess I should be happy that I get to play the better one earlier, but yeah. Point is, I love it. It's still only number 8 because in 99% of cases, open-ended levels triumph over linear ones, especially in a collectathon-based game, but this is still nothing to scoff at. Wet Dry World is kind of the main stage people like to bring up when discussing how absolutely weird this game's skyboxes and atmospheres can be. And I mean, it's pretty understandable why. Personally, I think it's a little overhyped on that front because you can't really see the skybox unless you're at the very top of the level, unlike in some of the other stages, and it's also a little too detailed to the point it almost looks like a mess of pixels if you don't pay attention. However, even so, I can't deny how much it sets the tone, and how many questions it leaves you with. What happened to this town for it to end up being entirely submerged under the sea? And where did all the inhabitants go? And that creepy vibe especially sets in once you swim down to the actual town area of the map, and you start to wonder if everyone may have drowned in a freak accident because somebody accidentally raised the water level. Honestly, for a while this was one of my favorite levels in the game, just based on this atmosphere alone. But lately, I realized they probably overrated this course a bit, because outside of the town area, the actual main starting location where you spend most of your time here isn't nearly as special. It's mostly just a bunch of blocks of different sizes everywhere. However, while it's worse, it's still nice. The fact that you have the ability to change what the water level is by walking into these crystals scattered at different altitudes makes the navigation far more versatile than in a lot of other stages, since you pretty much always have your own choice on how to reach a certain area. You can flood the whole place and just swim anywhere, or you can drain it out a little and platform your way around instead. You can even decide at which level the water should be at the start, depending on at which altitude you enter the painting. That's not to say it can still be a little annoying to get to the higher levels, since this pathway can't be reached unless there's a little water, and the only other way up is to get thrown by these heave-ho enemies, which wastes so much time if you miss. But beyond that, it's one of the least frustrating hard levels, and the only major knocks I can really give it is that the camera kinda f***s up while on this plank. Otherwise though, Wet Dry World is really good, even if the main area could certainly use more personality. You know, when I first started writing on this video, I thought to myself, man, there's no way I'm putting Bowser in the Sky in anything but the top spot. Ever since I was a wee little kid, I was instantly drawn to everything about it. I've talked about quite a few skyboxes this game has to offer so far, but absolutely none are quite as magical as this one's. The dark and ominous purple clouds looming far below you, and the pink sunset hovering in the horizon, not only is absolutely gorgeous in its use of color and perspective, but atmospherically, it also impeccably sets the tone for the final showdown, making you not only feel vigorous and determined with how far up you've come, but also still a little scared and freaked out, since one wrong step and you're gonna die and fall a long way down, much to the unconcern of this creepy location itself. Nowadays I don't tend to feel this as much, partly because I've played this game so many times already, but as a kid it was truly one of the most magical game levels I'd ever played, to the point that it even inspired my hyperfixation with purple and skies in general. So yeah, you can thank me later, Airship Fortress. That said, after playing through this game again for this video, I mean, it is still an absolutely great level, but I would also be making a gross exaggeration by pretending it's some sort of masterclass step above the other Bowser levels. Like, don't get me wrong, it's absolutely quite a bit better than the other two, since the bigger length and tighter platforming definitely makes for a more memorable experience, and the red coins typically make you go more out of the way to explore the level, which is always nice. But at the end of the day, it's also not that much different from the other Koopa roads. And while at least the Bowser fight is also genuinely difficult this time around, since the arena actually falls apart after the second hit, it also still has the same issue of sometimes feeling a bit dragged out, due to how precise you need to be when throwing him to the bombs. However, in the end, I'm always gonna have a special place in my heart for this gem. Ah, Bob-omb Battlefield. This level makes war look so playful and beautiful that I didn't even realize it was supposed to take place on an actual battlefield as a kid. I'm not saying war is beautiful. Wait, why am I copying Nintendo Land? Anyways, this course is absolutely magnificent. It is easily the most classic of 3D Mario levels without hesitation, and while it may not be as complex or intriguing as future levels, it is by far the greatest first impression we could have ever had for Super Mario 64. It just oozes so much unmatched charm, especially for being the only area in the game that feels truly real to explore. There are no places to fall off the map or liquids to drown in, and while on one hand it makes sense from a gameplay standpoint to kind of ease you into the game, it also just works so well on an immersion level as well, making for a perfect open plane for you to just mindlessly run around and not have to worry about anything. That's not to say it's devoid of hazards. There's still plenty of enemies ready to nab at you, and you still have to be careful and not fall off the big mountain, but on the whole the danger is a lot more manageable here, and hardly get in the way of exploring the stage, and it makes for such a relaxing and just plain immersive location. You could very well make an argument for it being the best level in the game just on this factor alone. I certainly wouldn't blame you. Personally though, while it is a near perfect first level, I don't think it's a perfect Super Mario 64 level. Remember, this game is about more than just the exploration, it's also about the platforming, and safe to say Bob-omb Battlefield is also pretty light on it for the most part. Most of the course is just an open field, which is obviously fairly unchallenging to navigate, and while I wouldn't do anything to change it, there are definitely levels that stick out to me more from a gameplay standpoint, while still having plenty of exploration. Actually, if I had to change anything, I'd give this course more than 6 stars, since I feel like having a higher quantity of them to find would have greatly benefited the more explorative nature of this specific level. Anyways, I love it. Lethal Lava Land is a kind of weird level to talk about because on the surface it really shouldn't be this good. It's probably got one of the most abstract ideas for any Mario level, being pretty much just entirely consistent of random platforms in a lava sea. Yeah, that sure makes sense and definitely isn't generic. I mean, I guess it's kind of supposed to be a town entirely submerged under lava, but I don't know, it certainly doesn't look like it. But honestly, for as weird as this level is, it is also honestly some of the most fun platforming that I've ever had in this game. See, unlike say the Quicksand in Shifty Sandland or the Pits of Hazy Maze Cave, the lava in Lethal Lava Land is not insta-kill. It makes you take a lot of damage, but unless you're low on health, you just bounce up and can usually get back on platforms. And this single-handedly changes how I approach navigating the level. Because instead of being constantly worried that one wrong move will kill all of my progress, I can be far more carefree and try to shortcut through this giant fire sea. The whole thing is pretty much a giant sandbox where you are free to go anywhere in whichever way you want. To the point that it's probably the course that takes the best advantage of this game's versatile controls. Honestly, I don't even mind the randomness of the setting because the gameplay is just that much fun. And for that matter, it's not all abstract, there's still a lot of thematic charm too. There's of course the volcano, which is nice to parkour through, and it's also the level that gives the largest focus to the bullet enemies, and I love these goofy and adorable little f***s so much. And how they think they actually have a legitimate chance against Mario. They're like small babies who think they understand everything but don't know a shit.
Wait, you like pushing babies off into lava?
Wait, what? No, not like that! Get out! Oh, f***. But yeah, it's kind of insane how this level manages to make so much of what little it has, to the point that I always look immensely forward to replaying it. Big Boo's Haunt, opening up the top 3, not only gets the honorable distinction of transitioning us from our great courses to our near perfect ones, but it's also probably the Mario 64 level to take the absolute best advantage of this game's collectathon gameplay. Having an entire haunted mansion for you to just freely explore and check out all of the rooms with at your own pace was one of the coolest things ever as a kid, and it wastes no time giving each room not only something fun to mess around with, but they also all matter at some point during your mission, so nothing feels missed out on. At the same time, it's also not a completely straightforward level to roam around on though, like say Bob-omb Battlefield. The top floor, for example, can only be reached with some precise wall jumping, and if you're not careful in one of the ground floor rooms, you also risk falling into the basement, which takes a while to get back up from. And this perfect blend of both exploration and platforming makes this easily one of the most engaging and potential fulfilling levels in the whole game. And sure, I guess on one hand, you could knock off a few points because of how many times you beat up the same stupid Big Boo, but at the same time, the journey leading up to him is always different every star, and I think that's more than well enough to make up for it. Otherwise, from this point on, I love pretty much all of these levels equally, and they all almost flawlessly blend platforming with exploration. It's just that a big house, or well, technically a small house in a cage, is not quite as out of a box idea as the top two courses have. Cool Mountain, taking the silver medal, manages to kill two birds with one stone by being not only a better snow level than Snowman's Land, but also a better mountain level than Tall Mountain, by combining the main attributes of both settings in a way that not only makes for a really unique level idea, but also just makes a ton of sense. Like, hey, mountains are vertical and ice is slippery, so why not theme the whole course around slides? And you'd think this would be a recipe for disaster at first and make it nearly impossible to make it back up to the top, but fortunately the developers thought of it and put a hidden teleporter at the bottom. You always start the level at the very top and only then subsequently head down, depending on what the mission requires of you. And if you accidentally jump off, it's usually no biggie. The stars are all incredibly varied in their objectives, whether you're helping a baby penguin find its mother, showing a snowman headed the way down to a body, or racing against a penguin down a slide on the inside of the mountain. Okay, granted, we probably didn't need 2 stars in this segment, but beyond that, it's just such a joyful and pleasant level to explore, where you don't really need to worry about screwing up when taking risks, since the screw-ups usually don't ruin your run, unless you're really unlucky. It's probably generous like this just because it's an early level and they can't afford to drive new players nuts, but in a game as archaic and tough as this one, it's a blessing in disguise in the modern day. I could have very well put it at the top of the list for these reasons, but at the end of the day, I also figured that there's just one level that stands out even more. Okay, seriously, I promise I've not been Nathaniel Bandy brainwashed. Yeah, I know this is probably a cliche number 1 pick, but at the same time, I guess that also just is the case for a good reason. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. While Tick Tock Clock may not be as polished, immersive, or developed as other 3D Mario's best levels, it is at least by far the most unique and multifaceted Mario 64 level by landslide. It takes pretty much everything that makes this game so fun and classic, and then goes 10 times beyond where it needs to. Is it absurdly difficult on one hand? I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna entirely deny that. It's easily the toughest level in the game. I mean, what would you expect from a setting as busy as the inside of a clock? However, unlike other super tough levels, it's also your decision how tough it should be, since by jumping into the level's painting, depending on what number the big clock hand is pointing at, you can effectively decide how fast and how often all of the mechanisms should move. At 3 it's slow, at 6 it's irregular, at 9 it's fast, and at 12 it freezes time. So essentially, you get to pick your own pace, and while some stars inevitably require time to move, this still adds a completely different perspective to the stage, when there's so many ways to approach it. You can take it more easily, or you can set yourself up for a challenge, although above all, the initiative choice removes so much of the frustration, and makes it a lot more easy to not be mad at the game, when it's usually your fault for screwing up. Never mind that this gimmick again just makes so much sense for a clock level, and makes this already unique setting pop out even more. And also, even though Tick Tock Clock is largely vertical, which usually leans itself more to linear styled levels, you'd be surprised by just how many split paths open up halfway through that lead to entirely different areas. Even as an adult, when I come back to the game, I'm constantly shocked by the amount of opportunities, and in the end, it just makes for a perfect balance of everything that could make a Mario 64 level so fun. And after years of getting accustomed to this game, I wouldn't even say it's that hard anymore for me. It's just really engaging because there's always something happening. So yeah, as predictable as this may have been, there really was no other choice for my favorite level in the game. And so with all of that being said, that wraps up my full ranking of all the courses that make up Super Mario 64. And overall, yeah, I'm confident in saying this game is aged super well. For every miserable or boring or ugly stage this game has to offer, it also has an equally mesmerizing, beautiful, and fair level to explore as well. Would I love to get another remake that irons out the biggest flaws and doesn't f**k up the controls? Yeah, absolutely, but even without one, this is probably one of my most replayed and favorite games ever made. Actually, scratch that, this is unarguably my most replayed game ever. At least if we're not including the dozens of Humongous Entertainment Junior adventures, those are in a league of their own. Yes, I will review them one day, don't worry. But yeah, in the meantime, let me know in the comments if you agreed with my ranking, or if you have completely different feelings on everything I said. With all of that being said, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video and want to see more Nintendo stuff from me. With all of that being said, I'm signing off now, until next time.